Welcome to Unscripted, carwash.com's video interview series connecting you with market leaders. On today's Unscripted video, we welcome in Dylan Von Kleist, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at AMPT, an NCS company. Dylan, thanks for taking some time today.
Thanks for having me on, Rich. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Today's video interview is titled From Transactions to Insights, Leveraging Customer Data in Car Washes. But before we get started with that line of questioning, Dylan, I was hoping you could, if you don't mind, give us a little bit of background about yourself, how you got started in this market, and maybe a brief overview of AMP for those who might be unfamiliar with the product.
Yeah. So I myself started my journey in kind of the process of making cars clean and shiny about just almost 30 years ago, actually. Did the math recently. At 16 years old, started my first car detailing business to help buy my first car. So I've been in kind of making cars clean and shiny most of my professional life. I've bounced in and out of the business, but for the most part, it's always been centered on that. And about 3 years ago, I made the transition to the car wash side from the automotive detailing. I've done everything from, chemical development for detailing companies, power tools, all kinds of stuff, all related to cars, but hadn't done car washing. And so an interesting opportunity, one of the co-founders of AMP, who owns 27 locations here in Colorado, offered me a position. We had been friends for a while. And so I came on board with him. And as part of that, I also joined the AMP team. So kind of jumped into the deep end working for both a vendor supplier side, software company in the car wash space, as well as a car wash operator. And so it made the opportunity really interesting to me because it wasn't just helping market car washes. Now it was marketing something that car washes used as well on the B2B side. So very interesting opportunity for me. And then kind of summarizing what AMP is, I mean, it's a little bit of everything, but really the way we try to describe it is an end-to-end integrated system. It is a omni-channel engagement tool for car washes to use with their customers. It started out as a white label app. So a car wash operator could have their own customized app for loyalty programs and wash purchases and wash books. And it's evolved into this entire CRM ecosystem. We're a year into our Clarity system, which is a end-to-end integrated system that includes point of sale and AI cameras and, basically everything that happens prior to the wash actually getting kicked off. So I've been, it's been a rocket ship kind of trajectory to join this company and watch it go from just being the app all the way to where it is now. And then obviously the acquisition by NCS earlier this year. But that's it in a nutshell. Just an innovative company that's doing a lot of interesting stuff and keeps me busy and both entertained at the same time.
I'm sure. Very cool. Yeah, I'm interested in. I'm looking forward to hearing more throughout this interview. So much information that operators have at their fingertips nowadays. Certainly, a lot's changed in your 3 decades of experience in this car wash industry. So, what changes have you noticed over these last 30 or so years?
I mean, going from detailing to car wash, I always thought car wash is kind of this, it was the guy, there's a saying in the detail industry that, detailers detail Ferraris and car wash owners drive them. And so it was always an industry that I've been interested in. And so I've kind of watched it evolve because, I grew up around, I knew several people who worked at full service car washes, flexer car washes, as, the vacuum guy or whoever they might be. And so that was kind of my early memories of car wash. And I did detailing. So I had friends who were in kind of that full serve area as well. And I watched the transition over to tunnel and all that stuff. But the main thing that I've seen change in really all of it, especially more recently, is that they're getting more sophisticated, especially as the car wash industry exploded, right? And there's tunnels opening everywhere, and we go to this automated process, and there's fewer human touches. The sophistication in the washes that do the best is starting to kind of be the most prevalent change I see. Even your single location operators are getting more sophisticated. They have access to a lot of the same tools, just like in any industry. As technology kind of evolves, it becomes cheaper and lower barrier of entry for those guys who are just starting out. So I've talked to operators who are, 2-3 locations just getting started, but they have some of the tools, that some of the big guys have at their fingertips as well. So they're leveraging those tools. So I'd say ultimately just the sophistication of what operators are doing, at least the top level operators are the ones that are being very successful.
No problem getting the data nowadays, but the difference maker is in what to do with that data once that you have it. So, what are providers doing nowadays with customer data that maybe they weren't doing before?
It's something I spend a lot of time talking to other operators about as I kind of consult, wearing both hats as I do. And it's really about I think the number one thing is customizing that customer experience. Rest in peace, George Wendt. We call it the Norm effect, Norm from Cheers. Everybody wants to feel like Norm when they show up to that place that they're at once a week or, a couple times a month. And the car wash is one of those places. So kind of making sure that interaction feels individualized. It's not this, it is ultimately a production line, right? It's a conveyor belt that runs cars through a car wash. It does the same thing over and over again. But as much as we can with the data that we have at our fingertips now, making that experience so that the customer's transaction and the touch points where they're interacting with people feels individual and personal to them. Not offering them a membership every single time they show up or asking them if they have a membership. They want to be understood and known on that level. And if they're just going to wash retail, understanding how often they're coming back or, what their preferred wash is. And then on top of that, kind of forecasting trends, kind of looking at a big one for us right now is kind of predictive churn modeling, starting to understand what does customer behavior look like. If they're a member, what do they start to do right before they get ready to cancel? What does their wash frequency look like? Maybe their promotions are expiring. Maybe they're not engaged with you on social media. Maybe the open rates on the emails and the text messages that you're sending to them aren't being opened as frequently. And so we have all that data. We can start to predict maybe customer behavior, maybe even before that customer knows that they're going to cancel. We can start to see those trends happen and take proactive steps to slow that down. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all about keeping customers in our ecosystem, whether that's positive touches on the front end or preventative touches on the back end. The data allows you to do all that.
Could you go into a little bit more about the sales attendant role at the site level? How can granular customer data be used to improve the payment gate experience with sales attendant, specifically leading to measurable improvements?
I mean, the main thing is kind of that Norm effect from Cheers that I mentioned, right? It's that individualized experience. If somebody comes every Thursday like clockwork and you're able to have an intelligent conversation with them, so the attendant in our system anyways has a tablet tool that's pulling up all of the information about that customer. How frequently do they visit? What wash level do they take? What promotions have they declined? What promotions have they accepted? We can even start building in things like surveys. If they follow the local sports team, have a conversation about the game from yesterday. So those are just some of the things that you can do. And while those don't directly correlate to sales, they're experiential. So that customer's a little more comfortable. They feel known, they feel like they're understood. And we can then start serving up offers that make more sense, right? If every time they show up, they're offered a membership and they just decline it every time, we shouldn't keep offering a membership. They clearly aren't interested in that. But maybe they're buying the mid-tier wash. Well, that's a perfect opportunity that instead of wasting that one touch point on another membership pitch that they aren't interested in, upsell them to a higher level wash or talk to them about the latest add-on or make sure they're downloading your app to earn loyalty points or any number of things that we can offer that person after they've told you that, hey, I just don't want this membership. Hit them over the head with that same thing over and over again. We have the little cartoon that we floated around before internally it's an illustration of an attendant on site, and the customer pulls up and goes, hey, would you like a membership? And the customer says, no, thanks. Do you have anything else? And the attendant goes, well, how about a membership? Because at most washes, that is kind of the experience. We only have a membership to hit them with. If we can be smart about it, we certainly do want to take that first swing at that customer and go, hey, I want to get you into my membership program. But if they've made a clear indication they're not into that membership offer, then you know that maybe it's something else, or maybe it's a better discount, or maybe it's a different type of membership, or whatever it might be. We got offered something different. So that's really where those sales start to hit. We can only do that if we have the data about that customer's history and transactions and interactions on site.
Sure. One of the other things you've noticed over your 30 years in this industry is competition has increased so much in this market, and really the difference maker might be in that customer experience, right? So, do you have any case studies? Can you share any quantifiable examples or specific results where the strategic use of customer data maybe directly led to a significant improvement in customer experience?
One of the most prevalent ones, we actually had a client that kind of A/B tested us as during their rollout. And they picked a specific market and had half of the locations on our platform and half not. And kind of the two eye poppers that came out of that they were looking at their NPS score. So if you know your net promoter score, right? And some watches pay attention to this, some don't, but they actually had a 20-point increase on their net promoter score at the locations that were running the AMP platform versus those that weren't. So that alone right there indicates that the customers were just having a better experience. They were happier with the overall experience there. But then that ends up translating to about a 50% reduction in churn at those sites. Again, same market, same brand, everything else being equal, just different parts of the same market. They were split. The sites that had AMP systems on place with all the tools that we give them and all the data reduced their churn by half. So the 20-point increase in net promoter score and 50% reduction in churn, that tells you everything you need to know, right? If current state is this, and we can do that kind of a lift by installing AMP and giving them all the tools and the data and all the access to these powerful things that they can do, the lift is almost immediate, especially if they leverage it.
Often we see it in sports when we talk about analytics and some of the old school people who just kind of go off on feel or intuition. So let's say hypothetically a business has historically made decisions based on intuition rather than data. What foundational steps would you recommend they take to integrate data effectively into their decision making process?
I mean, the first thing really is having control of that data from day one, or at least getting it as soon as you know you want it, which is a problem in some legacy systems. But having the access to the data, getting a good, clean way to connect all that data, and access it and study it and analyze it and chop and dice it and figure out. Once you have it, you start to kind of formulate, well, what do I even want to know? I've said this multiple times when I've given talks about this stuff, is that there's so many operators, I think, that have operated in such a data vacuum, and a lot of what you said, operating on intuition and gut alone, that once they have access to all this stuff, they're not even sure what questions they need to ask. Like, it's like I have the infinite amount of wisdom about my customers at my fingertips, but I've been just operating on assumption. What should I know? So there's certain things that we want you to look at, right? We want you to come up with KPIs around churn and your promotion success and your capture rates and all those things that are things that some operators understand to a degree, but then starting to drill down into those even further and kind of bifurcate that information. Go, well, we ran this promotion at this location and this promotion at this location, and here's how the tenure of those customers looked, or the take rate of the capture rate on that promotion looked, and start doing A/B testing, and then start drilling into that data. Every operation is going to have something that's slightly more important to them, whether that is driving membership or it's driving retail visits, whatever it is, but identifying those, coming up with some solid A/B tests, and then really diving into that data and peeling back the layers to understand it so that you go, okay, I'm not making decisions purely on gut. Gut's a good place to start. You have an assumption, but you got to be very scientific about it once you have the data and start to drill down and either prove out your assumption or disprove your assumption and be okay with the results at the end of it, and then go that way, whatever the data tells you to do.
So that's very interesting. If I could just have a follow-up question there. You mentioned just now having control of your data from the beginning is really essential. Is that not what's happening now in the car wash industry today? And if so, why is that happening?
Unfortunately, no. And it's kind of a shocking conversation that we have with some operators, whether they're transitioning to our system or starting up, is that there is a lack of ownership of that data across multiple legacy systems. And there is a ransom fee effectively to get that data out, which is, I mean, is a wild concept, right? You have built a brand, you've attracted customers, you've serviced those customers, sold them and all the things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want that data, somebody else is in control of it unless you're willing to kind of give the money to unlock it. So we want to basically create a situation where if you're with us, you own your data and you have immediate and instant access to it anywhere, anytime. And so as you know, whether you're starting up a wash, you're starting a brand, or you are a legacy brand that's starting to move towards, modern systems, one of the first questions you need to be asking yourself is my provider, all the companies I'm interacting with, do I get to own this data? Do I get to control it? So if I ever change my mind and I decide to go somewhere else, if it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, am I up against this ransom fee again to get control of something that I earned?
Okay. Well, let's talk about 3 and 5 and 10 years from now with this last question, Dylan, and I'll get you off the hot seat. I want to talk about the future of car wash data, if we can. How do you see businesses evolving their use of customer data to gain a competitive advantage in these coming years?
Even I think it was mentioned earlier, getting control of and leveraging that data is job one. but then further enriching it, right? There's layers upon layers of information that you can build about a customer. Every time they show up on site is an opportunity to build on that data, whether that's asking survey questions or offering them different promotions so you understand their behavior. Then there's things that you can do away from the wash, right? What's their interaction? If you're leveraging something like our app, what deals are they opening? Are they playing the in-app games to win prizes? Are they opening your push notes? And if you can, connect that to your email campaigns, connect that to your social media campaigns. Are those customers engaging with those? If you're sending direct mail to their mailbox, is that coming back and being redeemed? And are you able to tie that one-to-one to the customer's address and say, okay, I mailed it to Bob Smith and Bob Smith came back with that card? That tells you a lot more about Bob than if you send 500 cards out and don't know which ones came back specifically to which users, right? So that ongoing idea that you can have all the information in the world, but you can always continue to enrich it with additional layers of information and better understanding and start to understand that top 20% of your customer base that generates about 80% of your revenue, right? On top of that, then, because there is so many data points, I highly recommend getting into AI data analysis, using tools that allow you to pick apart and ask questions, because with this much input, it's very hard to build queries yourself to understand all this. You either have to have a data scientist on staff or get very comfortable using AI tools that you can then ask questions against complex data sets and multiple points. I'm doing that currently right now myself, trying to build that predictive model for the other side of my job at Auto Wash. I'm feeding it all kinds of things from social media, our digital ad campaigns, our email open rates, all of the data we have from the AMP platform. I'm feeding it hundreds and hundreds of data points. It'd be impossible for me to peel this apart kind of manually, or maybe not possible, it'd be a very long-term project. I'm using AI to speed that process up so that I can just ask questions of the data versus having to sit there and kind of chop it up myself.
Interesting. All right. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you taking a few minutes today, Dylan, to discuss this topic with me. Certainly learned a lot about how operators can use this customer data to their advantage here moving forward. And again, I appreciate you taking some time with me today.
I appreciate the opportunity, Rich. Thanks so much.